You've seen it before. Men who aren't louder, richer, or even better looking, yet women gravitate toward them effortlessly. Meanwhile, you're doing everything right. You show up, you listen, you're patient, polite, attentive, and somehow you're still stuck at the first few dates if you're lucky. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. Women aren't complicated, but they do respond to things unconsciously, long before logic or words ever enter the picture. Attraction isn't built on effort, it's built on signals. Signals most men don't even realize they're sending or missing. There are 10 things certain men understand intuitively, not because women explain them, but because they learned how attraction actually works beneath the surface. This video is about those men and why others never get that explanation. This isn't a checklist on how to please her, impress her, or behave better. It's a psychological map showing why certain behaviors quietly raise your value without you chasing validation. If you want clarity before you pay for it with time, emotional exhaustion, or self-respect, like the video and subscribe. Now, let's break down what these men understand and why it changes everything. Number 1. Knowing when to lead and when to stay silent. Most men believe that giving advice is the same thing as showing care. So the moment a woman talks about a problem, they jump in with solutions. Fix this, say that, do it this way instead. On the surface, it feels helpful, logical, even masculine. But psychologically, it sends a very different message. Unsolicited advice quietly tells her one thing. You don't think she can handle this on her own. And attraction doesn't grow in the presence of that signal. It shrinks. Women aren't drawn to men who rush to correct, optimize, or prove they're smarter. They're drawn to men who can stay grounded while emotions move around them. A man who doesn't panic when there's tension. A man who doesn't need to insert himself just to feel useful. Leadership in her nervous system isn't about talking more. It's about restraint. It's about being able to sit with uncertainty without scrambling to control it. When you listen without interrupting, when you don't immediately try to win the moment with advice, something subtle happens. She feels competent, safe, and respected in your presence. That's why men who understand this don't feel the need to perform intelligence. They let silence do the work. They allow her to arrive at her own conclusions. And when she does ask for guidance, their words land with weight because they weren't desperate to give them. Here's the truth most men miss. The fastest way to lose authority is to overuse it. The fastest way to gain respect is to show you don't need to assert it constantly. A man who can hold space without rushing to fix becomes the man she respects. And respect is the soil where attraction actually grows. Number 2. Understanding what treating her like a lady really signals. Most men misunderstand this completely. They hear treat her like a lady and think it's about manners, opening doors, pulling out chairs, remembering polite gestures. Those things aren't wrong, but they're not the point. They're just the surface language of something much deeper. What women are actually responding to is structure, safety, and the feeling that the man in front of them knows where he stands and where she stands too. When a woman reacts strongly to what seems like a small gesture, she's not responding to the action itself. She's responding to what it signals, that you're attentive, that you're deliberate, that you're not sloppy with how you move through the world or how you move with her in it. A man who understands this doesn't perform chivalry to earn approval. He moves with intention. He creates an environment where she doesn't have to stay alert, manage details, or wonder if she's valued. That sense of ease is what her nervous system reads as attraction. Here's where many men lose ground without realizing it. They either dismiss these details as pointless, or they overdo them in a way that feels forced. Both lead to the same result. She stops feeling anything. When a man gets this wrong, he often ends up labeled as nice, polite, inoffensive, and quietly invisible. Because attraction doesn't grow from being agreeable. It grows from feeling held within a clear, confident structure. Treating her like a lady isn't about tradition. It's about presence. And presence is something women feel immediately long before they ever explain it. Number 3, emotional self-control under pressure. Women don't expect men to be flawless. They don't expect endless calm or emotional numbness. What they do watch closely is how a man handles himself when pressure enters the room. Because stress is never hypothetical in a relationship. It's inevitable. Pay attention to this. She's not only observing how you treat her, she's observing how you treat waiters, strangers, co-workers, friends, especially when something doesn't go your way. In her mind, those moments aren't random. They're previews. Temper is a forecast. A short fuse today becomes a question mark about tomorrow. A man who loses control easily doesn't feel passionate to her. He feels unpredictable. And unpredictability doesn't create desire. It creates vigilance. Once a woman feels she has to manage your emotions. Attraction quietly steps back and lets caution take the wheel. There's also a crucial boundary many men cross without noticing. Sharing emotion is not the same as dumping weight. Confiding is saying, "This is what I'm dealing with." Burdening is saying, "Now you carry it for me." The first builds connection. The second drains it. When stress hits, a grounded man doesn't explode and he doesn't collapse. He stays responsible for his inner state. He doesn't use her as an emotional regulator. That self-command is what allows her to relax in his presence instead of bracing herself. Here's the shift most men never make. Attraction doesn't disappear because of conflict. It disappears when she starts monitoring you instead of trusting you. Lose control often enough and attraction doesn't fight back. It simply turns into quiet caution. And once that happens, it's hard to reverse. Number 4, surprise, uncertainty, and healthy challenge. Chemistry isn't built on comfort alone. It needs movement. Most men don't lose attraction because they're bad partners. They lose it because everything becomes too predictable, too available, too certain. And certainty, while safe, doesn't keep desire awake. Predictability tells her one thing: I know exactly what you'll do next. That creates stability, but too much of it quietly creates boredom. Women stay emotionally engaged when there's a sense of unfolding, not chaos, not games. But the feeling that being with you isn't a finished story, new experiences, new angles, a man who doesn't hand over everything at once and then wait to be evaluated. Healthy challenge isn't about withholding affection or acting distant. It's about not collapsing your entire value into pleasing her. It's about having opinions she doesn't always agree with, standards she has to rise to, a pace that isn't dictated by her mood alone. When a man removes all friction, attraction loses its grip. There's nothing left to respond to, nothing to lean into, nothing to discover. And once boredom sets in, no amount of kindness can reverse it. This is where many men accidentally sabotage themselves. They think consistency means sameness. They think security means giving everything freely, immediately, and without boundaries. But attraction doesn't reward excess availability. It dulls in its presence. A woman doesn't want to feel confused by you. She wants to feel stimulated, engaged, curious about what's next. That spark doesn't come from unpredictability for its own sake. It comes from a man who is rooted enough to invite her into motion rather than parking the relationship in neutral. Here's the truth most men learn too late. A man who gives everything too easily trains her to stop valuing it. And once value drops, attraction follows. Number 5. Validation done right. Attention and compliments. Most men don't realize how quickly validation loses value when it's overused. Compliments feel harmless, positive, even generous. But when they come too often, too easily, or without restraint, they stop feeling meaningful and start feeling expected. Women don't remember the words themselves. They remember how the moment made them feel. And constant praise doesn't deepen that feeling. It flattens it. When everything is special, nothing is. Attention works the same way. It's emotional currency. Spend it with intention, and it raises your value. Spend it impulsively, and it turns you into background noise. The man who gives her his full presence when it matters stands out far more than the man who is always available, always responding, always orbiting. This is where many men confuse interest with attraction. Interest is loud. Attraction is selective. A grounded man doesn't chase her attention with endless affirmation. He lets his attention become something she feels when it's there and notices when it's not being handed out carelessly. There's also a quieter mistake hiding here: disguised clinginess. When compliments are used to soothe insecurity, women sense it immediately. What sounds like admiration on the surface feels like pressure underneath. And pressure is the fastest way to make attraction pull back. The men who get this right don't withhold warmth. They simply don't leak it. Their words land because they're timed. Their attention feels valuable because it's focused, not frantic. Here's the shift that changes everything. Validation isn't about proving she's special. It's about showing that you are discerning. When attention comes from a man who doesn't give it away freely, it carries weight, and weight is what attraction responds to. Number 6. Awareness of her needs and emotional triggers. Men often underestimate how much women pay attention to small details, not because the details themselves are life-changing, but because details reveal awareness. What seems trivial to you is often diagnostic to her. This is where male and female perception quietly diverge. Men tend to categorize issues by size. Big problems matter. Small ones get ignored. Women don't sort experiences that way. They read patterns. Repetition, tone, consistency. A small behavior repeated becomes a message, not a mistake. The man who stands out isn't the one who waits to be corrected. It's the one who notices before she has to ask. Not because he's mind reading, but because he's present. He observes how she reacts, what tightens her body language, what drains her energy, what softens her. Those pet peeves aren't random irritations. They're stress tests. Subtle ways women check whether a man is tuned in or just coasting. Every time she has to remind you of something that matters to her, attraction pays a small tax. Over time, the account runs empty. This isn't about perfection, it's about responsiveness. A woman feels valued when she sees adjustment without negotiation, when she doesn't have to teach a man how to care, when awareness replaces defense. Ignore these signals long enough and the relationship doesn't explode, it erodes. She stops asking, stops explaining, stops expecting. And when expectations disappear, so does emotional investment. The men women feel drawn to understand this instinctively. Awareness is effort without noise, and quiet effort is far more powerful than loud intention. Number 7. Protection without ego or violence. Women want to feel protected, but not in the way most men assume. Protection isn't about posturing, picking fights, or proving toughness. Those behaviors don't signal strength. They signal instability. and instability never feels safe. What a woman is responding to is the sense that a man can handle situations without escalating them, that he knows when to step in, when to speak up, and when to stay composed. Protection psychologically is calm authority, it's boundaries, it's discretion. A man who understands this doesn't let others disrespect her unjustly, but he also doesn't turn every disagreement into a public spectacle. He doesn't embarrass her to make a point. He doesn't correct her in front of others to prove he's right. Because public humiliation, even subtle, destroys social safety. And once social safety is gone, connection follows it out the door. There's a golden rule most men learn too late. Loyalty is tested most when disagreement is visible. A grounded man protects the relationship's dignity first. If something needs to be addressed, he waits until privacy allows honesty without damage. This isn't about putting her on a pedestal or pretending she's always right. It's about understanding that trust collapses when she feels exposed or unsupported in front of others. Once that happens, attraction doesn't argue, it withdraws. True protection feels quiet, controlled, predictable. It tells her, "You're safe with me," not because I'm aggressive, but because I'm stable. And stability is what allows her nervous system to relax instead of scanning for threats. Men who confuse aggression for protection end up creating the very insecurity they claim to defend against. Number 8. Inviting her into your world, not orbiting hers. One of the fastest ways a man loses attraction is subtle. He doesn't become cruel. He doesn't disappear. He simply collapses his life around her. His schedule bends. His priorities blur. His world shrinks until the relationship becomes the center of everything. At first, this can feel flattering to a woman. But attraction doesn't grow in a vacuum. It grows in the presence of a man who already has direction, a world that existed before her and would continue to exist without her. Women are drawn to men who invite, not men who attach. Invitation implies choice. Orbiting implies dependence. And dependence quietly turns desire into obligation. When a man brings a woman into his life, his interests, his goals, his rhythm, he is offering shared growth. When he abandons those things to keep her pleased, he creates emotional pressure. She becomes the axis holding his stability together. Whether she asked for that role or not, that's where attraction starts to strain. Not because she doesn't care, but because she can feel the weight of being someone's entire emotional ecosystem. Desire doesn't thrive under that weight. A grounded man encourages her to pursue her own passions while remaining anchored in his. He doesn't compete for her world, and he doesn't disappear into it. He allows two lives to intersect without one consuming the other. Here's the truth. Most men avoid facing. A man with no world of his own eventually feels like a burden, not a prize. Attraction responds to expansion, not collapse. And women feel the difference immediately, even if they never put it into words. Number 9. Listening as a signal of strength. Most men think listening is passive, something you do politely while waiting for your turn to speak. But women don't experience listening that way. To them, it's a test of presence, of patience, of whether a man is actually there with them or just occupying space. Listening isn't staying quiet while she talks. It's engagement without interruption. It's catching the emotional undercurrent beneath the words. When a woman speaks at length, she's not always asking for solutions. Often, she's checking whether you can stay grounded while she expresses herself fully. Men who fail this test usually fail it in one of two ways. They either tune out, nodding without absorption, or they jump in too fast, finishing her sentences, reframing her story, redirecting the conversation back to themselves. Both send the same signal: impatience. A man who listens well doesn't rush resolution. He notices patterns. He reflects key words back, not to manipulate, but to show understanding. That reflection tells her you're being heard at the level that matters. This doesn't ignite attraction on its own, but it keeps attraction alive. Listening builds trust, and trust is what allows desire to stay open instead of guarded. Without it, attraction becomes fragile, easily disrupted by stress or misunderstanding. Here's the important distinction: attentive listening isn't submissive, it's controlled focus. It shows you're strong enough to hold attention without needing to dominate the conversation. That composure creates emotional safety, and emotional safety is what allows a woman to keep leaning in instead of pulling away. Men who truly listen don't lose authority, they deepen it. Number 10, integrity, the quiet foundation of attraction. Most men think attraction fades because of something dramatic, a big mistake, a fight, a turning point. But more often than not, attraction erodes quietly, through inconsistency, through small promises broken, through words that don't line up with behavior. Women don't measure a man by the size of his promises. They measure him by his follow-through. What you say you'll do and what actually happens. That gap is where respect either strengthens or collapses. Integrity creates psychological safety. When a woman knows your word means something, her nervous system relaxes. She doesn't have to monitor. She doesn't have to guess. She doesn't have to brace herself for disappointment. And that sense of reliability does something powerful. It allows attraction to rest instead of staying on edge. A man who constantly explains, reschedules, or justifies broken commitments slowly dissolves trust, even if his intentions are good. From her perspective, inconsistency isn't an inconvenience, it's instability, and instability forces her into self-protection mode. Here's what many men don't want to hear. Being late once isn't the issue. Being unreliable is one missed word plants doubt. Repeated doubt rewires how she feels around you. And once that shift happens, no amount of charm or effort can fully undo it. Integrity isn't loud. It doesn't need to be announced. It shows up in the small moments. Showing up when you said you would. Communicating before disappearing. Respecting your own standards even when it's uncomfortable. Attraction doesn't die because a man lacks technique. It dies because the structure holding trust together quietly collapses. When integrity is present, attraction has something solid to stand on. When it's missing, everything else eventually gives way. Attraction doesn't grow because a man tries harder. It grows because something about his presence feels different. What you've just heard aren't tricks, lines, or surface-level behaviors. These 10 things are signals, psychological cues women respond to long before they ever put words to them. They're felt, not negotiated, registered, not debated. This is why so many men stay confused. They focus on effort while attraction responds to structure. They focus on approval while desire responds to grounded presence. And by the time they realize something is off, the shift has already happened quietly beneath the surface. Women aren't drawn to men who perform. They're drawn to men who are internally organized. Men who don't rush to fix, don't leak validation, don't collapse their world, and don't abandon their word. These 10 things aren't techniques you switch on. They're reflections of how you operate under pressure, in uncertainty, and when no one is watching. And that's exactly why they matter. If you don't want to learn these lessons through rejection, burnout, or slow emotional erosion, then make a conscious choice right now. Subscribe to the channel, not out of habit, but out of self-respect. This is where clarity replaces confusion and awareness replaces guesswork. If one of these points hit uncomfortably close, say it in the comments. That's usually where the real work starts. And if you know a man who's doing everything right but still losing ground, share this with him before he mistakes effort for attraction. Understanding changes the game, and once you see these patterns clearly, you can't unsee them.